It's been 10 years since I last went to a job interview, but here I am, 44 years old, and I've decided to continue doing what I love. My name is Alex Price, and I'm a mechanical engineer. I recently moved to this area, and to be honest, this company used to be one of my main competitors. I have a feeling they'll offer me the job when they see what I can offer them. I hope everything works out soon. I mean, my plan to get rid of my cheating wife. I met Holly in 1993, and I can still remember what she was like back then. She was beautiful and so confident. I was shy and withdrawn. I guess that's the effect of being raised by a domineering bitch of a mother. She had help from her ugly sisters. Their names were Megan and Anna, and they bullied me throughout my childhood. Megan was the oldest, 13 years older than me, and Anna was 10 years older. Apparently, I was a mistake and unplanned, and they all blamed my parents' divorce for my birth. My father left home in 1977 when I was 5 years old and never returned. I only recently learned the truth. "Come in, Mr. Price. Nice to meet you." I was immediately charmed by the warmth of Robert Williams, the owner of Sutton Hydraulics. He was the complete opposite of the bastard I had left behind. "Thank you for taking me on, Mr. Williams," I replied cordially. I sat down in his impressive office, and he sat across from me and began to speak. "I'm surprised you're leaving Walker Engineering, Mr. Price." "Call me Alex. I can't wait to get out of there," I replied. "You're an excellent employee, Mr. Price. Alex, I'm very sorry." He was still looking at me with a puzzled expression on his face. "I do an excellent job, Mr. Williams. Please call me Robert," he interrupted me. "As I said, I've worked hard for the last 10 years, and it's my work that has moved the company forward, without much thanks and, lately, without any respect." He looked at me seriously for a few seconds. I didn't say anything about my situation and wanted to keep it secret for now. "I have no doubt that I want you to stay, Alex. I can offer you what you asked for, namely a pay rise of several £1,000s. But you also said on the phone that if you help us secure a few more contracts, you would like to receive a commission. Is that correct?" He frowned. "Yes." "I hope it's not something illegal, Alex. I won't get involved," he said. I raised my hand to assure him of my honest intentions. "I talk to our customers a lot. I talk to them every day. I know how much they pay for our products, and I know the contracts almost by heart." I began to explain to the attentive Robert Williams. "How could anyone know that we offer more favorable terms? With my projects and your team, we could become the best in the field. What do you say?" I suggested confidently. He held out his hand and I shook it. Looking into his eyes, I was sure that I was dealing with an honest man. Another part of the plan was complete. Now back to my cheating wife, Holly. We met at Kingston University in South London. She was in her final year of creative writing, and I was finishing my master's degree in mechanical engineering and design. As I said, I was too shy to approach her, and she never lacked attention from men. She was 5'5", with chestnut hair and large brown eyes. She was the kind of woman you could get lost in. She had a beautiful body, but I knew she was taller than me. All the guys who were chasing her were outgoing and popular. To my surprise, one of her friends spoke to me at a party, and Holly came over to us. I had little experience with women, and I think my modesty and shyness attracted her. I plucked up the courage to ask her out, and we started dating. After about 6 months, I heard rumors that she was sleeping with other guys, but I had no proof and was afraid to talk to her about it. Holly was a spoiled child. Her parents had spoiled her and her sister Caroline, and for most of our relationship, I had to put up with her princess behavior. If she didn't get her way, she would throw tantrums and wasn't shy about causing a scene in public, which confused me. My friends couldn't stand her and thought I should get rid of her, but I was in love and had never felt anything like it before. After graduating from university, we both got jobs and were able to rent a flat near Southampton in Hampshire. Her family was from there, and I had long since stopped finding anything in common with mine. We got married a year later, and Sophie was born the following year, followed by Ava a couple of years later. Holly loved being a mother, and everything was good for us. I got promoted several times and started working at Walker Engineering 10 years ago. The pay rises and bonuses helped us save up for a better house, but, like most people around the world, 2008 was a bad year. Due to the economic downturn, many people lost their jobs. It became harder to get contracts, so we all had to work harder and longer without getting any extra money. It was during this time, when both girls were in high school, that I realized Holly was having an affair with a guy from our old university. I was so absorbed in my work that when it ended, I didn't even realize who he was. And my best friend Toby thought it was a guy from her class who had moved next door. One day I brought it up with her, and she just laughed in my face and told me to stop being silly, but I knew she was lying. Since I kept my job and my good salary, I was able to buy a nice house. Holly always insisted that I buy a house that suited our status, whatever that meant. But I gave in as usual, and we managed to buy a nice detached 5-bedroom house in Southampton. At the time, the market was favorable for buyers, so we got a good price, although the mortgage was a little high. The only thing I did wrong was to open a new savings account in my name only. I only put my annual bonus into it, and since I was the sole breadwinner and responsible for all the finances and banking, I don't think Holly would have found out even if I had waved the receipts in front of her. Looking back, I can say that it was one of the best decisions I could have made. I needed protection because I wasn't sure if Holly would leave me if her ex-lover came back. After that, everything went back to normal and the girls always came first for me. I encouraged them in their studies and tried to spend a lot of time with them on weekends. In fact, more often than I can remember, I took them to dances, concerts, and the zoo. Holly always seemed too busy with coffee dates with her spoiled and lazy friends. I rarely socialized with the other husbands, but we all seemed like nephews and subordinates to varying degrees. My friends would sing the Rolling Stones song Under My Thumb to me when I canceled plans in favor of what Holly wanted. Even at work, the guys on the shop floor would comment on my family status and especially Holly's control over me. Everything came to a head just a few months ago. Ava had just left for university, and for the first time in 18 years, Holly and I were alone. Both girls had attended our old university, and as I finished unpacking Ava's things in the flat she would be sharing with her sister, she turned to me and asked why I was with their mother in the first place. I was stunned because she had always been as quiet as her old father. "Dad, I heard she's dating Henry Walker from your company," Ava said. I still remember the tears in her eyes when she said that. It was news to me, but I wasn't surprised. All these years, I could have investigated her adventures, but I never did for fear of destroying the family and causing my girls to suffer and hate me the way my sisters hated their father. I let her cheat on me because I couldn't even think of another option. I still loved her, but I loved what we had built even more. This news had several effects on me. First, I realized for the first time that my daughter's hostility towards their mother was much greater than I had thought. They loved and respected me, but I knew they were disappointed that I hadn't taken a tougher stance with Holly. Second, it made me remember the old feelings I had toward women in my life growing up, and how that had contributed to my weaknesses. Finally, I realized that at work, my colleagues openly discussed and laughed at me, and most of all at Henry Walker, who turned out to be the nephew of Jack, the owner of the company, and the man with whom I had a cuckold relationship. I didn't know what to do, but I knew I couldn't go on living like this, especially now that my youngest daughter had found out how Holly had insulted me. I knew I had to talk to her. My heart was pounding as I sat at the kitchen table waiting for Holly to come home. When she finally appeared, I found I couldn't speak. She just looked at me with what could only be described as apathy and contempt. She didn't say a word to me as she put her things away in the cupboards. Finally, I spoke. "Are you having an affair with Holly?" She turned to me, blushing slightly, but replied without hesitation, "I wouldn't call it an affair, dear." I was shocked by her admission and waited silently for her to explain why sex with another man wasn't considered an affair. "You're a wonderful man, Alex. You provide for me very well, and you're my best friend, but there are things you can't give me, and I'm not ashamed to say that I want all those things," she said bluntly and openly. "So you're cheating on me," I said, disconcerted by her brazen approach to infidelity. "Only with my body," she replied, "but not with my heart or mind, Alex. Those belong to you." My head was spinning, and my stomach was in knots. Her audacity left me speechless. "I've never denied you sex, Alex, and all I'm doing is exploring myself with a couple of young guys," she confessed. "What?" I exclaimed. I hadn't raised my voice once, and my reaction caught her off guard. She walked around this table and sat down across from me. "Don't yell at me, Alex," she said, regaining her composure. "You admitted that you cheated on me with 2 guys and I'm supposed to keep quiet," I replied. "I love you, Alex, but this is how it's going to be. Deal with it, or I'll leave and be with them," she said, threatening me and giving me an ultimatum at the same time. I just sat there and looked at her as her face softened. For a moment, I thought she saw the pain on my face. "Everyone does it these days, Alex. My friends have cheated on their husbands with younger men and say it makes their marriages better," she said. I was in shock. It had been hard enough for me to accept all this before, and now Holly was trying to justify her cheating by saying that all her friends were doing it too. As for her opinion that it would improve our marriage, it was dismissive at best. She didn't care about marriage or me. All she cared about was the comfort and security I could provide her. I spoke again. "So you're saying I can have another woman, Holly?" She looked at me for a few seconds, then laughed in my face. I sat there silently while she continued to laugh, trying to collect my thoughts. Yes, Alex. Come on, be serious. You have trouble talking to women you've known for years. What chance do you have of talking to someone else? She was openly mocking me, continuing to giggle, and I felt awkward and embarrassed, but she didn't give up. It's going to be like this, Alex, so don't ruin what we have. I'm still your wife, I still love you, and I still come home to you every night. Don't ruin your life, don't complain, and don't do something you'll regret later. She left me at the table, and I thought about what had just happened in my life, in my world. She was so open about her affairs that I realized she didn't need me at all. I didn't care that all her friends were sluts, but that didn't give her the right to be one too. Not only that, she dared to threaten me. I was angry, very angry. That night I slept in the guest room. I couldn't be near her, but around midnight, Holly woke me up and asked why I wasn't in bed. Was she really that blind? I knew she was a spoiled bitch, but was she really that bad? Come on, Alex, stop it. That's the way the world is. You're acting like an old man, she said. I didn't answer. I could feel her presence on the stairs as she peeked into the guest room. Whatever you want, Alex. You'll be back in bed soon, I know you will. You never say no to me, and you know as well as I do that I always get what I want, she said confidently. In fact, she was right. What had I done in 22 years of relationship that could prove my boundless devotion and willingness to agree with everything she said and wanted? Everyone knew I was supporting her, and now all her friends and my colleagues knew I was also a cuckold. I couldn't sleep, so I decided to go downstairs and watch TV. There was a program about celebrities researching their family trees, and although most of it went over my head, it made me think about my own family. I wasn't in touch with my mother or sisters, but I started thinking about my father. I knew so little about him. Did he have a family? I think he did. Why did he leave, and was it true, as my mother said, that he abandoned us? Before I left for university, I learned from my brother-in-law that my father had died many years ago, but my sisters denied knowing anything about it. So I decided to cut them out of my life. The next day, I got up and left the house before Holly appeared in our room. Her words were still spinning around in my head, and I was desperately trying to focus on something more positive to get through the day. I remembered a TV program I had watched the night before and decided to ask my father about it. The girls didn't need me anymore, and my wife was having sex with who knows who, so maybe finding out who my father was would help keep me occupied. Good morning, Alex. I turned around to see who was talking and bumped into Henry Walker. His smug expression, as if he was ready to burst out laughing at any moment, made my blood boil. I just stared at him and said nothing. How's your wife? He asked, clearly mocking me. I heard a few chuckles from the adult men at the coffee machine. I just stared at them as they stood there. I walked past them, and they continued to chuckle at my expense. It felt like the whole world knew about my business, and even my boss's secretary, Olivia, seemed to find my situation funny and worthy of ridicule. Can I get you anything, Mr. Price? Maybe a couple of balls? I looked at her. What did you just say? I asked, looking her straight in the eye. She shifted from one foot to the other and came over to me. I told you no calls, she said, trying to hold back her laughter. I went into my office and sat down at my desk. My day had started off badly, and now I was a laughingstock at work and at home. I tried my best to focus on the project, but the anger inside me wouldn't subside. I decided to start looking for my father. All I knew was that he was born in Cambridgeshire and died in 1977 at the age of 38, so I started searching for family history websites in that region. After 30 minutes of searching, I discovered that there were 14 people named James Price living in Cambridgeshire who were born in 1939. I knew that he had probably died a few years before I went to university, so I narrowed the list down to 3 possible candidates. Deciding that I didn't have time to research each of them, I posted a message on genealogy websites in each of the towns I had found. As I sat in my office reflecting on the past day, I received a call from my boss, Jack. He wanted to talk to me in his office. Jack was a successful and wealthy man, but at 60 years old, he had been married 3 times. He was a cheater and a tyrant. He was one of those power-hungry types who demand respect but give nothing in return. I had thought about leaving many times in the past, but he always convinced me to stay, and the money was the best in the area. The only thing I knew about him was that he was sleeping with his secretary Olivia behind his third wife's back. I've heard that your wife is cheating on you, Alex, he said sharply. With your nephew, I snapped. Yes, he's a hot-headed guy. It runs in the family, he said, laughing when I fell silent. But I want to talk to you about this. I don't want it to affect the business. And family comes first for me, Alex. So if you have a problem, you'll have to quit. Is that clear? He spoke to me like an old school teacher punishing a child. I bit my lip as I watched his impatient secretary Olivia standing at the door. She was undoubtedly gathering information to pass on to her friends at the factory. Turning to leave, I wondered why a young woman like her would stoop to having sex with a dirty old man like Jack Walker. As I walked past her, I heard her giggling again. I lowered my head and left. When the door closed behind me, I heard explosive laughter clearly directed at me. Returning to my office, I realized that my visit had been a complete waste of time. I had paid for my daughter's education, and now I was financing my wife's infidelity. I was a fairly simple man, loved my gadgets, but could do without a big house. Most of my expenses went to Holly's whims. Weekly trips to the hairdresser and manicurist, her car, phone, and other unnecessary luxuries. I was generally happy at work. It was a place where I could be creative, and I was very successful. I was the one who designed many of the items that were manufactured and sold there, and I was confident that I could find work elsewhere. They just thought I was too weak, and they were right. I wasn't confrontational and never made a scene because I was content. I was good old Alex, the modest engineer that people got along with easily. I looked at the screensaver with a photo of my family on holiday, clicked the mouse, and my email opened. There was a message waiting for me from a woman named Jennifer Holmes from the Cambridge Genealogical Committee. I was stunned at how quickly they had responded, clicked on the button, and read the message. I was stunned. Jennifer had read my message requesting information about my father and contacted a woman who claimed to be his niece and had visited the same website months earlier while researching her family tree. Her name was Rachel Murray, and she was my cousin. I sent Jennifer my number and asked if Rachel could contact me. I left work in high spirits. As soon as I walked in the door, I smelled dinner. I left my bag in the hall and went into the kitchen to find Holly cooking. We exchanged greetings but ate in silence. During dinner, Holly kept trying to look me in the eye, but she must have realized that I was still angry. Until that evening, I couldn't go a few hours without embarrassing her or pushing her to the limit. She was the first to break the silence. "Can we talk about last night, Alex?" she asked meekly. "There's nothing to talk about. You explained perfectly what happened last night, and I either accept it or I don't, right?" For a few seconds, she looked at me with a regretful expression on her face, but it didn't last long. She took a deep breath, cleared her throat, and continued. "You're a great husband, and you've never denied me anything, so please don't deny me this, Alex." She was almost begging, as she always did when she wanted something. "If I'm so wonderful, why did you cheat on me? Why did you make a fool of me?" I asked honestly. She wrinkled her nose and just waved me away. She had no answer. She was just being selfish, and it was annoying me more and more. There was nothing more I could do to make her happy. How many hours do I work to pay the bills and give her everything she wants, and all I get in return is disrespect and ridicule? I drive a 12-year-old Range Rover, and she drives a car that's less than 2 years old. Listen, Alex, I have needs, and you can't satisfy them. So either you deal with it, as I know you can, or you give me to a younger man. You mean Henry Walker? You can use his name, Holly. Everyone knows he slept with you, I interjected. Yes, Henry and I are lovers. He's practically your boss, Alex, and one day he'll take over the company, she said bluntly. So right now he's giving me what I need in bed, and if you can't accept that and agree to it, I'll leave you, and he'll give me everything I want and need. As usual, I didn't say anything. I just got up from my chair and went to the office. I really wanted to hit someone or something, but instead, I sat down on a chair and screamed into my hands. Tears welled up in my eyes, and I wanted to be anywhere but here and now. I found a handkerchief and wiped my eyes when the phone rang. I picked up the receiver and heard an unfamiliar voice. It was Rachel. We talked for about an hour, and when I hung up, everything else flew out of my head and a big smile appeared on my face. Rachel was thrilled that I had decided to confront my father, and she had a lot to tell me. She talked at a speed of 100 miles an hour, and I had trouble catching everything she said. I learned that my mother had actually kicked my father out of the house and lied to me throughout my childhood. Unfortunately, he died in 1983 when I was only 11 years old. He died of alcohol poisoning, and his mother, my grandmother, always blamed my mother for his character and mental state after he left us. Rachel told me that he really wanted to come back into my life, but he was prevented from doing so. We agreed to meet this weekend at her house in Cambridge. I was excited and knew that the break would do me good. The rest of the week dragged on, At home, everything was the same, but at work I was constantly being ridiculed behind my back. Henry and his friends decided it would be funny to hang a pair of panties on my office door. I looked at Olivia, but she didn't say anything. Inside the panties was a note. Please give these back to your wife. I was devastated. That day I sat at my desk and cried. I wanted to blame everyone but myself. I was glad when Saturday came. I told Holly I was going to London to see a friend, and she didn't ask what I was going to do. I thought she would make fun of me, so her absence made it easier for me. The trip to Cambridge was tense. The M25 motorway was a nightmare, as usual, and I arrived at Rachel's house an hour later than planned. She didn't seem to mind, because she greeted me with the warmest hug I'd had in years. I was introduced to her husband, Greg, and their two young children, Grace and William. Once the formalities were over, we moved on to talking about my father and my new family. Rachel was so warm and selfless that she and Greg constantly interrupted each other and finished each other's sentences. I think they both couldn't wait to share our family history. During my stay, David and Lucy Price joined us. He was my cousin and Rachel's brother. We hit it off really well, and he told me everything he knew about my father and family. After lunch, we went on a short trip where I had time to reflect. When we returned, David and I talked about work and family life. He could tell that something was wrong, and for some reason, I confided in both of my new cousins. They simply told me not to put up with it and that they would support me if I needed anything. I was very grateful to them. I left Cambridge with a new outlook on life. I had been lied to and mistreated for so long that realizing I had a completely different family who had shown me more kindness and honesty in one day than most people I had known in my entire life gave me hope. I needed to get my life in order and be happy again. Not just for myself, but for my girls, my friends, and my new family. When I got home, it was already 8 o'clock in the evening, and Holly was just getting ready to go out. "Where are you going, Holly?" I asked. "To meet some friends." "You mean Henry or Max?" I interrupted sharply. She looked at me, somewhat stunned that I knew the name of her other lover. I gave her a knowing look. "Please don't do this anymore, Alex," she begged, seemingly oblivious to my feelings. "Please, Holly, I'm begging you, stop this and marry me. Stop being silly, Alex. I'm your wife and always will be. Don't deny me my pleasures, and I'll make your life easier. I'll be back by midnight." She completely ignored my wishes and continued to threaten me. She approached me with outstretched arms, and I turned away from her. She didn't respond to my blatant insult, just picked up her Prada bag and headed for the door. "Holly, as your husband, I'm begging you not to do this." My voice grew harsher. She stopped and looked at me as if wondering who this guy was and how he dared to talk to her like that. It lasted only a second, and then she burst out laughing. "What are you going to do, Alex? Leave me? You'll never have the guts. We both know you'll always be there for me." I lowered my head, and her words echoed in my head. "You don't have any balls? You're depriving me of pleasure." I always knew she was a spoiled girl. Her parents made sure of that. I knew I treated her like a queen while I was a workhorse. I knew she was selfish, but I always believed she loved me more than anything else in the world. I knew I was a fool, and I knew I had been one for too long. It had to end, and I had to make a plan to make it happen. Without wasting any time, I got down to business. I started with when Henry or Max had sex with her. Maybe they did it together. Maybe that's what she'd meant when she said she loved getting and eating brownies. I provided her with safety, protection, and material comforts, and two young idiots had sex with her whenever they felt like it. These thoughts drove me crazy, and I began to lose my concentration. I had to find a way to destroy the last remnants of my attachment to her, and I think I found it. I found the box I was looking for and the photo I needed. It was the only photo I had of my mum and sisters. I didn't think it would work, but I cut Holly's face out of the photo and stuck it next to them. I no longer felt any love for them, and adding Holly's smirking face to the photo might help. I placed it on the table next to the monitor in my office. Around 12:45, I was finishing up work. I had almost decided what I was going to do in the near future. I could already picture when I would leave, but it could be a few weeks. I had time because Holly wasn't expecting me to leave. Maybe it wouldn't work out, and I would definitely need help to make it happen, but by that point I had convinced myself that I would see it through. I heard someone stumble at the door, and getting up to look out the window, saw Henry Walker's car driving away. I heard her coming up the stairs and quickly covered my tracks. In future, I would have to use incognito mode. I waited until she went into our bedroom and went downstairs to make some coffee. I sat on the sofa and thought about my future. Away from this place, and to be honest, without my daughters, I knew it wouldn't be so bad. I decided to try moving closer to them. On Monday morning, I went to work, knowing full well that I wouldn't lift a finger. Jack Walker could fire me, I didn't care. I went to my office ignoring the taunts and comments directed at me. I would destroy those bastards, and I knew my anger would help me do it. I managed to make an appointment at the bank for 1 o'clock, and I spent that time preparing for the meeting and analyzing my finances. The chances were slim, but if everything worked out and I got the help I needed, I would get out of this situation unscathed. The meeting went according to plan, and I was able to close my savings account and remove my name from our joint account. I still had a few thousand left in my ISA account, so I closed it, withdrew the money, and put it in my wallet. On my way to the office, I stopped by PC Die World and bought 2 digital voice recorders, a 500 GB USB 3.0 hard drive, and a new hard drive for my computer. Back at the office, I sat down at my desk and started checking to see if I could access the company's client files. I had seen them briefly in Jack's office, so I knew they existed, but I needed his password. It took me less than an hour to crack it. Ironically, his username was his name, and his password was his name and the 6-digit number of his birthday, Jack22240U656. I had everything I needed. I connected the drive to my computer and copied all the files onto it. 10 minutes later, I did the same with all my new plans and drawings for an energy-efficient hydraulic pump system I was working on to keep the company ahead of the competition. We manufactured pumps for air conditioners, heavy equipment, and even diaries. I deleted my entire computer history, including all my plans and projects. Then I turned off the computer, removed the hard drive, and replaced it with a new one. I put everything in a bag and reinstalled Windows. I spent the rest of the day researching our competitors on my phone. I went to Monster to look for engineering jobs in South London and Surrey, then left work. In the evening, after another silent dinner, I went to my office. I discovered that one of our main competitors, which was going through a financial crisis, was looking for a mechanical engineer to design and manage a store. It wasn't exactly what I wanted, but it was pretty close. They were offering £10,000 less than I was earning, so I sent them an email with my CV attached. That night, I decided to sleep in our marital bed so as not to disturb Holly. However, I made sure I was asleep before she came in. I felt her press herself against me and I felt disgusted, but despite my revulsion, I was pleased to react that way. I felt repulsed by her, and in the long run, that would help me. The next day, I received a call from a very surprised Robert Williams from Sutton Hydraulics. We spoke briefly, and he couldn't believe that I would leave Walker Engineering to join his small company. He offered me the job almost immediately, but I insisted on an interview the next day. He agreed. Another important link had been established, and things started moving very quickly. I had a lot of free time, so I started looking for a flat in the area. I didn't need a house, and although there weren't many options, I managed to find a very nice flat. It cost £1,200 a month, had 2 bedrooms, and was perfect for me. The flat was 15 minutes from the girls and 5 minutes from work. I arranged to view it the day after my interview with Robert Williams. I then spoke to Jack and told him I needed to meet my daughters in Kingston the next day to sign some papers, but he just waved me off and said, "Go ahead." That evening, I called my best friend, Toby Brown. We had known each other since 6th grade. We both went to school in Kingston, but he studied finance and maths. Now he was a senior bank analyst in the city and lived with his wife and children in a beautiful house in Twickenham. He and his wife hated Holly more than anything, so we rarely socialized as couples. Holly was jealous of Sarah because she was an ambitious web developer and married to a wealthy banker. I think that even with everything I gave her, I still wasn't on her level. I arranged to meet Toby the following evening after my interview and viewing. He knew I had something on my mind, but I told him I would tell him everything when we met. I thought a lot on the way there. Today was important not only for my immediate plans, but for my entire future. At that point, I had no idea how the girls would react. Until my recent revelations, I had planned to retire at 55. I was thinking of investing in a villa in Italy or somewhere else. My mortgage would be paid off when I turned 50, and an extra 5 years of work would allow us to build up a small nest egg without relying on our pension funds. My new job was about a 20-minute drive from the girls' flat. The meeting went quickly, the flat was perfect, so I had plenty of time before meeting Toby, so I bought lunch for myself and the girls and headed to their flat. They lived together, and I paid half the rent. As I approached the house, I didn't know what to say to them. I didn't know how often they talked to their mom, but I knew I didn't want to hide anything from them. When they saw me, they ran up and hugged me as I walked through the door. My smile was visible from space. I missed them so much. "Daddy, Daddy!" they shouted, laughing like little children. They led me into the house, and I set out the dinner I had bought on the way. We sat down and ate, and they told me about their lives and their studies. I was so proud of my two girls. Sophie had been studying pharmacology for 2 years, and Ava was training to be a nurse. Two professions for loving and caring people. I looked at them as I would have looked at Rachel, and we talked for a long time about our new family, promising that we would all be together soon. When we finished lunch, I took a sip of coffee and thought, do they know something is going on? What is it, Dad? Tell us, said Sophie. Well, you know your mom cheated on me, right? I said. They both looked at each other, then back at me and nodded in unison. Well, that's it for me. I've decided to leave her, I muttered, smiling at everyone. Okay, said Ava. Finally, Dad, added Sophie. Girls, you won't be angry and do anything, will you? I asked timidly. No, Dad. As far as I can remember, she's always been a bitch to you, Sophie growled. I considered scolding her for disrespecting her mother, but didn't. In fact, I thought, good for you, Sophie. I felt awkward again because they had obviously seen it when they were children. I hoped they wouldn't follow in their mother's footsteps when it came to men. I hoped I hadn't caused them any pain because I was too weak and pathetic. I also hoped that I respected them. What are you going to do, Dad? Ava asked. I told them I had a new job and that I was moving closer to them. They were thrilled, but also surprised that I had actually decided to leave their volatile mother and was already making plans to do so. For that, I received two big, loving hugs. I told them I would do everything in my power to secure their financial future without going into details. When I got up to leave, they said they would support me no matter what. And although they loved their mother, I was more important to them and always had been. I left their flat feeling happy and ready for the next stage of my plan. This was the most important part. Toby and Sarah met a few years after he finished university. They are two of the nicest people I know, and today I was counting on their help. They greeted me warmly, as usual, but I was lost in thought about what I was going to ask them, and they both realized that I was not myself. They immediately asked what was going on, and I told them. There was no point in beating around the bush. I told them everything that had happened and the first part of my plan. They were more surprised by my resistance than by Holly's betrayal. In their eyes, it was quite normal. So why did you leave her now, Alex? Sarah asked, handing me another cup of tea. I declined anything stronger as I had to drive home that evening. I always thought she was cheating on me, but I couldn't prove it. Now she's admitted it, and everything has fallen into place. I also discovered something that made me decide it was over. I told them about meeting my cousins, how my mother had kicked my father out of the house, and how my sisters had taken her side. My father was just like me, or rather I was just like him, but this time my girls are on my side. So this discovery made you finally stand up for yourself? Toby asked. His face showed concern. No, they took me to my father's grave. At first I hesitated, but then I was able to lay flowers and say a few words. Then I looked at the inscription on the stone and was shocked. That's when I knew I had to leave, I explained. What was it, Alex? They asked in unison. There was a rose engraved on the stone, and underneath it was written, in memory of him. There was his date of birth, and below that, the age at which he died. There was a moment of silence before I spoke again. He died at 44, the same age I am now. Toby and Sarah recoiled slightly at the news, and I knew they understood me. There were times when I could have done what he did and turned to alcohol or killed myself, like my grandmother thought I would. I had a choice, be like him or fight. I said clearly. I decided I wasn't going to kill myself trying to be the perfect husband that everyone made fun of and laughed at. At that moment, I felt weaker than I had in the past few weeks. Admitting my depression to my friends was harder than I thought. Toby pulled me out of it. What do you want from us, Alex? Please back off if this is too much, but I have a plan to protect myself and… Get that bitch out of here, Sarah interrupted. I smiled and nodded. Sarah really seemed tough. When I suspected she was cheating on me in 2008, I opened a separate savings account and put all my bonuses and savings into it. I was also lucky that the only way to get a mortgage for the amount we needed was to apply in my name only. Holly didn't have any real work experience, so it was easier for me to apply on my own. I knew that if anyone could follow my train of thought, it was Toby. My savings with interest now total £68,100. I'm £120,000 short of paying off the mortgage, but the house next door sold for £500,000. Toby, I need your help and your connections to get a short-term loan for the remaining £60,000. I want to pay off the mortgage before I divorce her. Why? That means she'll get half, said Sarah. Well, apart from the 60-odd thousand pounds I'll keep for myself, she can still fight for half of everything. But that's where you come in, I said, pausing. I want you to register a new company. What do you mean, register a new company? Toby interrupted me. I want to transfer the ownership of my house to your new company. That means she won't be able to claim it. I've checked, and if I pay off the mortgage, all I have to do is go to the land registry and transfer the documents to your company. Toby and Sarah looked at each other. Will that work, Alex? After all, if you divorce her, she'll hire a solicitor and fight for everything. She doesn't have the money for that, and I'm sure her parents won't want to pay such a huge bill if they find out their daughter is a cheater and a slut. Besides, I hope to use her opinion of me to my advantage, I said. How? Toby asked. She thinks I'm a coward who would never leave her. So I'm not going to ask for a divorce until I sell the house. The property will turn into cash, and by the time she realizes I'm divorcing her, we'll be able to transfer that money into lots of different accounts. Toby just smiled at me and said, I didn't know you were capable of that, Alex. So will you help me? I asked. Of course, I'll figure it out, but you know a good lawyer will try to trace the money, right? He said. Yes, but that will take a long time and she won't be able to pay for a big lawyer. After another hour of conversation, I headed home. All the pieces were falling into place. On the way, I decided that I wouldn't even file for divorce. I was sure I wouldn't meet anyone else, let alone remarry, and this would give me more time. I figured Holly wouldn't worry about my absence for at least a month. The thought made me smile. By next week, I'd be gone. When I got home, it was almost 2 in the morning. I checked on Holly, she was fast asleep. No pangs of conscience were keeping her awake, I thought. I decided to move into the guest room. On Thursday morning, I got up and left the house before Holly woke up. In the morning, I wrote my resignation letter, and around noon, Toby called. I have good news, bad news, and then good news again, mate. Okay, let's take it one at a time, I said, laughing. The good news is that I registered the company. It'll only take an hour at the office, he said. The bad news is that you'll need some serious collateral to get the loan you need. Something like a house, which isn't an option for you. I was upset and scratching my head, trying to think of something, when Toby continued. Listen, Alex, you trust me, and I trust you. I've talked to Sarah about this, and we feel the same way. I'll transfer 60,000 pounds to your account right now, so you can get your business started. Just pay me back when you find it, okay? I was stunned. If he could have seen my face at that moment, he would have understood how grateful I was. That's too much, Toby. You've already done enough, I interrupted him. Just take the money and do what you need to do, he said. You have no idea how much this will help me, mate. I owe you big time. Just do it. Get away from that disrespectful, greedy crook and be happy. That's all we care about. I gave him my details and ended the call. The next call was to the bank to arrange a meeting for the following day. After work, or rather the lack thereof, I drove to the local Land Rover dealership. I knew the guy because that's where I bought Holly's Range Rover Sport about 10 months ago. In fact, I was still paying for it. I had an idea how to get some more money. Hello, Mr. Price. Have you finally chosen a new car? John Reeves met me at the entrance. He was the owner of the dealership. No, John. I wanted to talk about selling my wife's car and paying off the debt, I said, looking more pleased than I should have. I hope everything's all right, he asked. Everything's fine, you know her. You know how demanding she is. Now she wants a Mercedes 4x4. I don't want to say anything bad, but she seemed quite pushy, he admitted. We agreed that he would take the Range Rover and we would cancel our payment plan. I promised to come back to upgrade my car, and he knew he could recoup the cost of Holly's car by selling it as practically new. I apologized for the inconvenience, but the thought of him selling me an expensive new Range Rover more than made up for it. On my way out, I bought a 2016 brochure, not for myself, but for Holly. When I got home, Holly was sitting in the living room drinking coffee and looking a little pale. I took off my jacket and threw my bag on the floor. Are you okay, honey? I asked, clenching my teeth. Yes, just a little tired, dear, she replied, taking a sip from her mug. She held out her arms as if she wanted me to hug her and comfort her. I ignored her, went back to my bag and took out the brochure. I know what will comfort you, I said. I walked over to her and sat down at the coffee table across from her. She looked puzzled at the empty space next to her, then at me. What's that? She asked, looking at the brochure. Your car is almost a year old, and I was at the car dealership today and saw their new model. It's really cool, I said, and her eyes lit up. I want my wife to have the best of everything, so I'll trade in your car and buy you this one, I said, pointing to the new 2017 model in the brochure. Oh, I love it, she said, ignoring my plan. You always know how to cheer me up, don't you, Alex? The only problem is that they already have a buyer for your car, so I have to take it there by Friday afternoon. I'll finish work early and take it to the dealership, and you can use my car over the weekend to visit your family. The last remark made her recoil and a look of shock and confusion appeared on her face. What's wrong? I asked. Nothing, Alex. I just thought you were still angry about our agreement, she asked. That wasn't our agreement, Holly. It was yours. I didn't have a say in the matter, but I guess I don't have a choice, do I said, hoping for a response. She just nodded, as if she had finally decided to postpone the conversation, and I admitted defeat. I love you, Alex. I turned to look at her and met a sincere, concerned gaze. I didn't say anything and just walked into the kitchen. The phone rang, and I went out into the garden to answer it. Toby confirmed that the money had been transferred. I was ready to leave. The next day, without wasting any time, I went to the bank and found myself in the office of a mortgage loan officer. She was about my age, but there was no wedding ring on her finger. I thought maybe there was life after Holly, but dismissed the idea. An hour later, the mortgage was paid off. All my other bills were paid. I looked at a few houses and opened a new account at a different bank. I was happy knowing that I wouldn't have to pay anything unless Holly hired a solicitor and took me to court. My smile faded. I returned to the office, ignoring Olivia, who stood up to say something. I sat down at my desk with a cup of coffee and began to think about the next stage of my plan. I contacted the land registry and filled out the appropriate online application. I had all the details of Toby and Sarah's new company, and 10 minutes after submitting the application, I received an email confirmation that it would take 3-5 days to process. After that, all I had to do was pass the documents on to Toby, and he could register the property to his company. I decided to browse the internet for furniture and information about disconnecting utilities in the house. I had to wait for the right moment, but I opened new accounts for my flat in Sutton. Finally, I had one more thing to do, something I had been putting off for a long time. I knocked on Jack's door. Of course, Olivia was there. That dirty old bastard usually fiddled with her on Fridays, and I seemed to be getting in the way of their lovemaking. She left us alone. "How can I help you, Alex?" he asked cheerfully, watching Olivia leave. I placed my resignation letter on his desk. He looked at me with a stupid smile on his face. "What's going on?" he asked. "I quit," I replied. "I think it would be best if I left right away. Given the situation with our families, I don't think you'd want me to stay here too long." He looked stunned. "I'd appreciate it if you could prepare my P45 form by Monday. And please don't tell anyone about this, my wife doesn't know," I said defiantly. But, but you can't do that. We need you," he said plaintively. "Not as much as you need your nephew. I'll come back on Monday to pick up the rest of my things." I pretended to drop the pen from my pocket, bent down, and pulled a digital voice recorder out of my sock. I managed to attach a pin to it, and straightening up, I pressed the record button and tucked the recorder under the seat in the wooden frame. "If that's all Jack needs, I've got things to do." "All right, Alex. But don't come crawling back when you run out of money. It's only your money that keeps that cheating woman with you. You understand that?" "Of course I do, Jack. I wish my wife was as loyal as yours," I said, smiling. I knew that had hit a nerve. I turned and walked out of his office. An hour later, I arrived home, picked up Holly's car and the magazine. I drove to the car dealership and left her car there. Fortunately, John Reeves offered to give me a lift home, and I gladly accepted. When I returned home that evening, Holly was sitting at the kitchen table with large red bags under her eyes. I could tell she had been crying. "What's wrong, Holly?" I asked, pretending to be sincere. "We need to talk, Alex," she said, motioning for me to sit down. For a moment, I felt like I was being betrayed. Fear washed over me. "What's going on?" I asked. "I went to the doctor today, and I was diagnosed with—" She hesitated. 1,000 thoughts raced through my head. If it was something serious, what kind of person would I be to abandon a seriously ill woman? As I was about to do. I have," she stammered. "Just tell me, Holly, what is it?" I begged her to spill it. "I have gonorrhea," she finally said, bursting into tears. I laughed. Damn it, I laughed. And she just stared at me. "This isn't funny. I'm so embarrassed." I turned to her and she looked embarrassed. It must have been humiliating. "Well, I know I don't have it because I haven't touched you in over a month. And when I found out about your adventures, I used protection," I said, trying not to sound too smug. Oh, so you're okay then? That's normal? She continued to remain silent. Just take your medicine and soon you'll be back on your back. I mean, on your feet. If looks could kill, I'd be dead. Just find out which one of them gave you the medicine and tell them to take it to a doctor before the disease spreads further, I said, got up and left her crying at the table. That night I slept soundly for the first time in months. Of course, I slept in the guest room. It wasn't worth the risk with my wife so exhausted. On Saturday morning, I felt great. A good night's sleep had definitely done me good. So I went into our bedroom and woke Holly to tell her I would give her some time to rest and recover. I'll go to the girls. Give them my best wishes. Get some rest, okay? I said, trying to sound as loving as possible. She smiled at me and asked me to hug her. I gave in, but did so without enthusiasm. When she let go of me, she must have sensed that something was wrong with me. She looked at me sadly and said, "You think I'm disgusting, don't you?" I didn't answer, and suddenly tears started streaming down her cheeks. "I just want you to be better, that's all." "Oh, Alex, I love you so much. I think I ruined everything." I told Allison about my problem and she was horrified. At first I felt sorry for her, but she disappeared even faster than I thought she would. It shocked me a little. Then I realized that I had lost all love for the woman I had lived with for 21 years. Could she really disappear so quickly? Obviously she could because I was ready for it and her situation couldn't stop me. Without saying a word, I left the room. I got in my car and drove away feeling happy. Later that morning, I sat down with the girls and told them everything that had happened. They were shocked, and I could see that they were starting to respect me again. I told them about Holly's trip to the doctor, which they found very funny. I shouldn't have laughed, but I couldn't help it. And it made me think that maybe the girls really did hate her as much as I did. "What's she going to do about Dad?" Ava asked. "She'll have to move in with her grandparents or convince one of her lovers to take her in. I have a feeling those two degenerates were only interested in having sex with a married woman and bragging about it." "I doubt they'll want to have a relationship with her, do you think?" I asked. They both just looked at me and shook their heads. That evening, I stayed with Toby and Sarah, who were hosting a dinner party for many of their friends and colleagues. Among the guests were several single women my age, and I felt confident enough to strike up a conversation with them. The alcohol helped me approach a woman named Amy who caught my eye. She was a divorced friend of Sarah's, and under the influence of alcohol, she even persuaded me to dance. It was a fun evening, and it was just what I needed. An evening when I didn't think about Holly, about the end of my marriage, or about my plans to leave her, as if a heavy weight had been lifted from my shoulders. When I returned home late Sunday morning, Holly was doing housework. I walked into the living room, and when she saw me, she rushed over and hugged me. I just patted her on the back. "Where did you sleep, Alex? I thought you'd be home," she asked. "I had dinner at Toby and Sarah's, had a few too many drinks, and ended up staying on their sofa," I replied casually. "That's not like you. Did you have a good time?" she asked, giving me a wary look. I had to be careful not to give anything away, so I took out my phone and showed her a few photos. Soon her face turned red. "Who's that woman?" she asked angrily. "Oh, that's Amy. She's a friend of Sarah's. She made me dance. It was a lot of fun." I looked up from my phone and saw Holly glaring at me. The irony of her being angry at me didn't register. She was angry at me for innocently dancing while she had been having sex with some guy every week. "The next time, I want to go with you. I haven't seen any guys in a while," she said, returning to her usual color. I went to the kitchen and put the kettle on. Holly followed me. "You weren't too upset about not having a car?" I tried to fill the silence with small talk. "Fine. When will my new car be delivered?" she asked. "They said Wednesday." I turned around and saw that she looked a little worried. "But if you want, you can come by on Monday afternoon and pick it up." "I have things to do on Monday. I need to go to the hairdressers and shopping with my sister," she replied, clearly not too concerned about not having a car. "I can drive you into town to meet your sister, and she can take you to the car dealership. Then you can come back in your new Range Rover," I said, smiling broadly. She smiled and walked towards me with open arms. I went back to the kettle, pretending not to notice her. Holly spent the rest of the day next to me, and I felt awkward. She kept trying to kiss or hug me, and I made excuses to leave. She must have realized what was going on because when I went to bed, I saw that she was crying again. "Good night, Holly. Will you sleep with me tonight, Alex? I want to cuddle up to you and have you tell me everything will be all right." I felt nothing. "No, not until you get permission from Dr. Holly. I'm sorry, but it's your fault," I said harshly. "Well, when I get better, I'm sure I'll find a man who wants to sleep with me. I still have time to make up for lost time," she replied sharply. I smiled to myself. It took longer than I expected, but there she was, the bitch, back again. All my regrets about Friday night disappeared. For the last 21 years, I had been ready for her antics, but this time I ignored her tears and headed for the guest room. The last night in my house, and she would be sleeping in the guest room. I was glad she said these words. They dispelled all my doubts. I looked at the photo of her with her sisters and felt nothing but hatred for her. She was sweet when she wanted something and a bitch when she couldn't get it. On Monday morning, I woke up early. Holly woke up early too. She had a hair appointment at 8:30, and I drove her into town as planned. "Don't forget to take a taxi to the dealer around 2 p.m. They're waiting for you," I said, ignoring her attempts to kiss me. I drove off, knowing that I was probably seeing her for the last time. For some reason, I was afraid that it wouldn't happen, but I couldn't take it anymore. On the way, I called the mobile phone company and canceled both of our contracts. I pulled over to pay the fine on my card. I was told that the phones would work until 5 p.m. Great. Then I headed to the office to pick up my P45 form. I walked into the factory and there was a festive atmosphere. The news of my departure must have reached everyone, and for a moment I saw fear on their faces. I didn't know why. As I walked down the corridor to my office, I passed the coffee machine where the usual suspects were gathered. I wasn't sure if Max and Henry knew that they had both slept with my wife, but they both grinned at me and exchanged jokes with the other idiots. "Good morning, guys," I said cheerfully. "Good morning, Alex. How's the wife?" They said it with their usual laughter. How that joke could still be funny was beyond me. "Not too good, I'm afraid," I replied. "One of you losers took her away." I walked away in complete silence, and when I turned around, their jaws were hanging open, and Max shouted something to Henry. I heard a lot of noise before I made it up the stairs. Olivia saw me and smiled, lowering her head. Maybe now they had started to respect me. Jack was at the door before I had a chance to knock. "I have what you need, so take it and get out." Maybe the respect thing was just my imagination. I went into his office and sat down. I reached under the chair and discreetly slipped the tape recorder into my pocket. I knew he had told Olivia his weekly story on Friday night, and now I had it all on tape. "So you have another job, Alex?" he asked sharply. At first I ignored him, but then I decided to give him what he wanted. "No, nothing," I replied. A broad smile appeared on his face, apparently deciding that I would soon be back on my knees. "So, I'll get last month's pay and my annual bonus?" I asked. He burst out laughing when Olivia walked in with my termination letter. "What's so funny?" she asked. "Alex just asked me to pay him his bonus and his salary." "That's funny," Olivia said, joining in his laughter. I thought, why not? And laughed too. That made them stop and look at me like I was crazy. "Why are you laughing, Alex?" Olivia asked. "I don't know, Olivia. Why do you let that old bastard screw you every week?" I said, laughing louder and louder. They froze, her eyes widened, and Jack turned red with anger. "I'm sure Mum and Dad are proud of their slutty daughter." She threw my papers on the floor and ran out of the room in tears. "You bastard," Jack said. "Get out of my office and out of my company before I call the boys to drag you out by your ears." I laughed, left the house, and headed to my office to gather my last few things. I was still laughing to myself when I stopped in front of the house. I got out of the car and folded down the back seats. I opened the boot and went into the house. I walked around the house thinking about what to take with me. I had several Romero Brito prints, which I took down and wrapped in plastic I found in the garage. I put them in the car and continued walking around the house, gathering things. Finally, I went upstairs and cleaned out my closet. I took all the documents out of the safe, including the girls' birth certificates and my marriage certificate. I found the ladder to the attic, climbed up, and found all my old things. There was my diploma and family photos. I went to the handyman and took all the jewelry I had brought with me from Holly over the years. They were probably worth over 10,000 pounds. And then I took all the bags, shoes, and expensive coats I had brought with me. In fact, I had bought the whole damn wardrobe, so I took everything. I had always been a responsible person, so I had insurance receipts for almost everything, which came in very handy when I decided to sell everything. When I finished packing, I realized I would need a television, so I took that too, along with my film collection and, of course, my Blu-ray player. By this point, my car was full. I decided I could leave all of Holly's clothes and a few other unnecessary items, including my old clothes. I would need a new wardrobe, and the girls didn't miss the opportunity to help me with that. I found all the best photos of myself and the girls and put them in the car. I wasn't in a hurry to go anywhere because Holly wasn't coming back until 2 o'clock. I made a cup of tea and took 5 minutes to myself. A cup of tea is essential. I think it's even written in the Magna Carta. I picked up the phone, called the telecommunications company, and canceled my satellite TV, phone, and internet. I called British Gas and Southern Water to turn off the utilities. It would take a few days, but I didn't care. I went back to the bedroom and sat down on the bed when I noticed something that gave me an idea that scared even me. It was lying on top of the wardrobe in an old dusty box. It was Holly's wedding dress. She loved it, probably more than I did. I took it out and then, among the boxes of photographs on the bed, I found our wedding album. Taking a duvet cover, I gathered all my things and went out into the garden. Once outside, I went to the middle of the garden and piled everything up. I added all of Holly's clothes and the things I knew I couldn't sell. I tried to leave only her underwear because I didn't want it to get dirty. I went to the car and locked all the doors. I was about to leave, but when I looked at my watch, I saw that it was only 1:45 p.m., so I called Robert Williams and told him I could give him the P45 form later that evening, along with the night shift. That way, I could go to work tomorrow morning. He was delighted, and I told him that I was already working on plans to attract new customers and improve the hydraulic pumps to make them more competitive in the market. I think he sensed my enthusiasm, and as I ended the conversation, I hoped I'd made his day. It was already 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and I was still sitting there waiting for the phone to ring. Finding some solvent in the garage, I went out into the garden and poured it over my wedding dress. I was about to set it on fire when the phone rang. "Hello?" I said calmly. "What's going on, Alex?" Holly shouted into the phone. "What do you mean, Holly?" I asked sarcastically. "Don't play dumb, Alex," she continued. "Calm down, Holly. What's going on?" There was silence, and I could hear her heavy breathing. I heard her sister's voice in the background. "I was told that you didn't bring me a new car but sold mine." "Oh, yes, I forgot to tell you," I said. "What are you talking about, Alex? What's going on?" She began to panic. "Well, from now on, if you need a car, pay for it yourself," I said, trying to remain as calm as possible. My heart was racing. I don't understand, Alex," she said meekly and confusedly. "You heard me perfectly well, Holly. You can buy it if you want. Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to clean up the kitchen." "What? What? Is this some sick joke?" I didn't say anything. "We'll talk about this when I get home, Alex. I don't like being bossed around," she shouted. I fell silent again. I heard her running breathlessly to her sister's car. The slam of the door confirmed it. I knew she was on her way. In that state, she could convince her sister to be here in 5 minutes. "Alex, Alex, Alex." "Yes," I replied, almost too calmly. "You said you were in our kitchen," she asked, suddenly realizing what I had said. "Yes." "Why aren't you at work?" she asked. I remained silent. "Alex, Alex, Alex!" Her breathing stopped, and I heard panic and confusion in her voice. I hung up and she continued to shout my name. I went outside, lit a match, and started a fire. Our past flashed before my eyes as I walked away. I took our marriage certificate out of my pocket, tore it into pieces, and left it on the kitchen table along with the only photo of us all on holiday at Disneyland. It was a wonderful time, full of happy memories. I wonder if she felt the same way. I got in the car and drove away. When I reached the end of the street, I saw Holly and Jennifer pull up to the house in my rearview mirror. Neither of them looked up. They just ran into the house. I turned off my phone, smiled, and drove away. The A3 was almost empty as I drove to my new home. For some reason, I couldn't shake the feeling of fear that had come over me. I knew it wasn't the last time I'd see Holly, and as soon as my plan came to fruition, she would do everything she could to find me and make me pay. She was like that. I also knew she would drag the girls into it, and I didn't want them to bear the burden of our problems, especially since they needed to focus on their studies. By 4 o'clock, I was in Sutton and decided I had time to stop by the local mobile phone shop and sign up for a new mobile phone contract. I also had time to stop by the secretaries who were processing my resignation and meet Freya, my new secretary. She was quite young but very professional, the complete opposite of Olivia. I returned to my new flat, which was completely empty. The water and electricity were on, so I found the kettle I had brought with me from home and made a cup of tea. I moved my things and ordered a pizza. I took out my old mobile phone and turned it on. The connection was down. I smiled to myself, knowing that Holly was now also without a phone, and that would give the girls a little breathing space before I could talk to them. I found my sleeping bag, laid it out in the living room, and waited for dinner. My furniture was due to be delivered over the weekend, but for now, I was glad to be away from Holly. I turned on my laptop and found the voice recordings I had made at Jack Walker's office. I downloaded them and listened to them, looking for evidence of his infidelity to Olivia. I took 2 flash drives and made several copies. I wrote down the addresses of Margaret Walker, Jack's wife, and Peter Lewis, Olivia's boyfriend, then put the flash drives in envelopes. I'll send them tomorrow before work. Finally, I decided to call Sophie's daughter to tell her the latest news and keep her mother from finding out where I was. To my surprise, she admitted that she hadn't spoken to her mother yet. But of course, I guessed that she didn't have a phone to do so. In a week, I managed to furnish my flat and, without wasting any time at work, contacted Walker Engineering's clients and convinced them to move to Sutton. They saw what we could offer them and quickly switched to our side. A few people decided to stay with Jack, but most of them hated him but put up with him because of the excellent quality of our products. I knew Jack wouldn't immediately understand why he was losing clients, but I didn't care. I also knew that now that all the utilities had been cut off at my old house, Holly would realize I wasn't coming back. She couldn't afford to pay the bills, so I knew Toby could go ahead and put the house up for sale. Sarah happily took on the task, and by the end of the week there were "for sale" signs on the house. It was around this time that Ava contacted me. Apparently, Holly had moved in with her parents, and they were unhappy that their little princess had become a rebel. Holly, of course, was out for blood and furious at what I had done to her. Oddly enough, I felt a great sense of satisfaction, but I knew it wasn't over yet. Over the weekend, I was invited to another dinner at Toby and Sarah's house. I was told that Amy would be there and that she had been asking Sarah about me. I learned that she had been divorced for several years and had been single since her husband left her a year before the divorce. Apparently, the divorce had gone smoothly. She got the house, full custody of the children, and financial support. Unfortunately, she had been skeptical about men ever since. Sarah had told her about my situation, and she had wanted to meet me ever since. That's why they had arranged this dinner. She was 2 years younger than me and had 2 teenage children. I felt like I was being set up, but I decided it couldn't hurt. The dinner went well, and for the first time since I had thought about leaving Holly, I felt completely at ease. Amy understood what I was going through, didn't pressure me, and didn't let me know that she liked me. We got drunk, danced, and exchanged numbers at the end of the evening. She told me to call if I needed someone to talk to, and I thanked her. I spent the night in Toby's guest room, but the hangover was getting worse and coffee wasn't helping. On Sunday morning, I received some good news. Just a week after putting my house up for sale, I had 2 serious offers. I accepted one of them immediately for the £550,000. I knew it could take some time to finalize the sale, but I agreed to take the money as soon as it was available. I would open an ISA in the girls' names and then ask Toby to spread the rest between a few investment funds. I would also pay him back and take some cash to keep in a safe at home. I still felt the need to protect myself. Another week passed, and I was pleased to hear from Toby that the deal could go through very quickly. I contacted the removal men and told them to clear my old house. The girls called their mother to ask if she needed anything, but she became even more angry and threatening. I promised the girls that it would all be over soon. On Tuesday morning, I spoke to one of our new clients who had been meeting with Jack Walker about a possible contract extension. He told Jack he was leaving to join Sutton Engineering, and Jack wasn't surprised. He had heard that Walker Engineering was having to cut 50% of its staff due to job cuts. He also told me that Mrs. Walker was divorcing Jack because of his infidelity. I didn't feel a shred of sympathy for her, as I was mentally counting my commission checks during our conversation. I had no idea what had happened to Olivia and her boyfriend, but I knew that he would get my gift if Mrs. Walker got hers, and if not, I was sure she knew the reasons for Mrs. Walker's divorce from her husband. I wonder what her friends and family will think about her cheating on her husband with an older man. As a reward for my new job, I was given a brand new Land Rover Discovery HSE. I had already been thinking about treating myself, but Robert and the bosses were so pleased with me and how the company was doing that they gave me the car and several £1,000s in commission. In fact, it was over £30,000. I was looking out of my office window admiring my new car when a familiar Ford Focus pulled into the car park. I froze, realizing who it belonged to. It was Diana's car, Holly's mom. I leaned back in my chair and waited for the inevitable phone call. The bitch had finally found me. The phone rang in my office and I picked it up. "Mr. Price, there's a woman in the reception saying she's your wife," said Freya, my secretary. "Tell her I'm in a meeting and I'll be out in an hour." 3 hours later, I looked out the window and she was still sitting there. I exhaled loudly and decided to leave for the night. If she saw me, I'd have to deal with her. And if she didn't, I'd just drive past her. She didn't know which car to look for. I went out the side door and headed for my car. I had just gotten into the car when I heard the screech of tires, and before I knew it, she had stopped and blocked my way. She jumped out of the car and rushed at me with a menacing look on her face. She looked terrible, clearly wearing her sister's old clothes, and her hair looked like it hadn't been combed in weeks. "You bastard," she shouted, trying to hit me but missing. "I hate you! I hate you!" "Yes, I hate you too, Holly. Now, say what you want and get out of my life," I said, trying to remain calm. She just stared at me, tears streaming down her cheeks. "You ruined my life, you bastard," she whispered plaintively. I didn't say anything. I just kept listening. "You destroyed all my things, my wedding dress and my clothes." So far, she had only talked about herself, and I wasn't surprised. "And then you changed your mind and made me move in with my mom and dad," she continued. She just stared at me and waited for me to speak. "Is that all, Holly?" I asked. "Don't you have anything to say for yourself?" she exclaimed. I thought for a second, then invited her to get in the car. She was stunned, but I didn't want to make a scene in front of everyone. When we got in, I saw how bad she looked. She seemed older, and I wondered if all this, plus the STD, had taken a toll on her appearance. "Please come home, Alex. We can forget about everything. I forgive you." What did she just say? Were my ears deceiving me? "You forgive me?" I asked, hoping I had misheard. "Yes, Alex, I forgive you for destroying my things and my life." "Are you out of your mind, Holly?" I asked. She just looked at me like I was crazy. "You openly cheat on me and don't respect me when I give you everything, and you have the nerve to say you forgive me." But I thought, "No, Holly, you only think about yourself. I'll never be with you, so go away and be with one of your lovers," I said coldly. She shifted awkwardly in her chair, and I understood everything. "I guess when you suddenly became single, they didn't want you anymore?" I asked. "They accused me of giving them a venereal disease and said I was just having fun. They said they never wanted me to be their girlfriend because I'm a fickle bitch." For a second, I even thought that was cruel, but she brought it on herself. "Well, that was obvious, Holly, so find someone else." My friends started treating me differently. Now we've broken up, and their husbands are starting to doubt their fidelity, which means I've been kicked out. I could be a bad influence on them, if you can believe that. The word breakup kept running through my head. I knew it meant I was still connected to her, and that upset me. My parents are terrified, and everyone in town knows about my venereal disease, no doubt thanks to my so-called friends and lovers. And now some of the factory workers have lost their jobs too, and that's my fault as well. In reality, she was partly to blame for everything that had happened to her, but I felt sympathy for her. She had made mistakes and was now paying for them, but the price was too high. She had had a wonderful life and had destroyed it out of greed and disrespect. However, I knew I had to move on. "I have nothing left, Alex. I need you. I want you back in my life. I have no money and no job. When will I get my share of the house?" Here it comes. "You never once told me you loved me. You just need me, Holly, and I don't need you. As for the house, I didn't pay the mortgage and lost it," I lied. Her eyes widened and she opened her mouth in surprise. She was shocked by my words, but at least I knew how this visit would end. "I want a divorce," I said. "No, please, Alex, of course I love you. We've been together for over 20 years. I made a small mistake, and you're destroying me." "A very big, unforgivable mistake, Holly, and I'm never coming back to you." "Please, Alex," she screamed, her cries echoing throughout the car. "I need a clean break, and if you agree, I'll give you £30,000 in cash," I offered. I saw her face change, and the tears were replaced by a new determination. "No," she screamed. "I'll fight you in court for everything. You won't lose the house, you're too smart for that." Damn, she was right, and now I was on her back foot. "All right, Holly, I'll put it this way," I began. "You'll never get a penny from me." She shifted her hips and leaned towards me. "I'll fight for everything and more, Alex. You don't have any money, Holly, and I'll transfer all my assets so that you'll spend a fortune trying to find the money. I'm smart, and by the time your lawyer finds them, you'll have racked up bills that will wipe out any benefits. I'm offering you the money I'm offering, or I'm walking away. It's your choice," I said sternly, never taking my eyes off her. "You bastard. I loved you and gave you children, and this is how you treat me?" she said angrily. "Thanks to me, our girls will go far in life. They won't be liars and cheaters. They'll be selfless, not selfish like their mother. So take the money and get out of my life." My anger began to boil over, and she looked at me as if I were a stranger. "Fine," she hissed. "I'll take the money and agree to the divorce." "Fine, I'll take care of everything." With that, she got out of my car and slammed the door. A few seconds later, she drove out of the parking lot. The next day, I filed for divorce on the grounds of adultery, and a week later, I arranged to meet Holly at the girl's flat. The sale of my house went through, but I didn't want to invest any money in it until the papers were signed. We tried to be polite in front of the girls, but it wasn't easy. I gave Holly the money, and she signed the papers. I kissed the girls goodbye and wished Holly luck. As I was about to leave, she started crying again, but I felt it was just for the girls. Sophie and Ava looked at me and raised their eyebrows. They knew everything. "See you next weekend, Daddy," Ava said as I headed for the door. I went back into the room. Holly was still crying and no one was paying any attention to her. I suddenly realized what Ava had been talking about. "Oh yes, the Coldplay concert. Everyone's looking forward to it." "Will we meet you in London or shall we go together?" Sophie asked. "I'll talk to Amy and let you know this week," I said one last time before leaving. On my way out, I heard Holly shouting something, but I decided to ignore it and left. The end. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. Subscribe to my channel and stay tuned for the next video.